Hey y'all, so in the last video we talked about a lot of the different definitions and terms that people use in reference to writing poetry. Most of it has to do with structure of it and all that. So hopefully now that you know some of those terms, it'll be easier to understand when I talk about how to write these different forms. So this video is about poetic forms. So before I jump into the forms themselves, I want to talk a little bit about why I think you as a poet should explore different poetic forms. For me, I've been writing free verse poetry since I was literally probably in elementary school, if not middle school. You know, poetry has always been a passion of mine. It's always been something that I was interested in. And so, like, for most people, if you've written a poem, it's been in free verse. And there are, like I said, very few rules to free verse. It's kind of just, you have a lot of, you can decide where you do line breaks. You can decide whether or not it rhymes. And all of these things. Really, the only rule is that it has to be written in stanzas because it is a poem. So, once I got to this college level writing course and I heard that we were doing a poetry unit, obviously, I was excited because I'm like, what? Poetry is my thing. Like, I know everything about poetry. But once we started talking about the different forms and even just breaking apart the different aspects of poetry, I realized how little I actually knew about poetry. Like, because in my head, I was stuck in this world of free verse. And I had never explored outside of that, because I never felt like I had to, one. And two, I didn't know what else was out there. So I would just encourage y'all to attempt these forms. They can be challenging, but they can also be fun if you really take your time with it and try it. And don't put too much stress on yourself to get it right, because it's really hard. It can be hard. So yeah, with that being said, I'm not going to go over, I couldn't even begin to go over every type, every different poetic form. So I'm just going to go over 5 poetic forms that I have written poems in these forms and that I have studied. So these forms are found poem, Abecedarian poem. I'm pretty sure I said that wrong. I just called it the alphabetical poem, to be honest. The sonnet, and the Ghazal poem, and then free verse. But we kind of already talked about free verse. So I guess it's really more like 4 poetic forms. So I'm going to start with the Ghazal poem. The Ghazal is an ancient Arabic poetic form. So that's where it originated from. And the Ghazal poem is written in couplets. Okay, it's written in a series of couplets. A couplet is a pairing of 2 lines. And the way I like to describe it is 2 lines that stand alone. When I say they stand alone, what I mean is it's 2 lines separated by a space, 2 lines, 2 lines. Now, you're not going to be able to see the words, but I'm going to just show you what it looks like. So as you can see, it's 2 lines. That's a couplet right here. That's a couplet. Separated by a space right here, couplet, space, couplet. So that's how it's written. This is what it looks like. And okay, so the second rule, so that's the first rule, it's written in couplets. The second rule is about the word. So the last word, listen carefully because it can get confusing right here. The last word of the first 2 lines is the same word, all right? And then that same word is the last word of the second line of each following couplet, all right? So I'm going to repeat that for you. The last word of the first 2 lines is the same word. And that same word is the last word of the second line of each following couplet. Remember, a couplet is a pair of 2 lines. So, I know that's kind of confusing. So, for y'all to understand a little bit better, I'm going to read you the first 2 couplets, the first 2 pairs of 2 lines. So, it's the first 4 lines of my Ghazal poem called Soothed by Sun. And so y'all can kind of see what I mean. So golden rays kissing honey-colored skin, smooth yellow sun. Vibrant lilies flourishing, watered by cool rain, fed by mellow sun. So that was the first couplet. Moving on to the second couplet. Front porch, Cook County, sitting still on steaming cement, sirens sounding, basketballs striking asphalt, silhouettes illuminated by scorching sun. Okay, so notice how I use sun. That's the word that I'm using in this poem. So notice how I use the word sun both at the end of the first line and at the end of the second line. Notice how when I move down to the second couplet, the last word of the first line is sounding, and the last word of the second line is then sun again. So I'm not going to read you this entire poem, but I'm going to just read off the last word of each line so you can see the pattern. It'll be easier to see the pattern. So sun, sun, sounding, sun, stiffen, sun, wind, sun, fit, sun, nightstand, sun, touch, sun. So hopefully y'all can see the pattern that I'm talking about a little bit more clearly. And then the third rule of the Ghazal poem is that somewhere within the last couplet, either, the last couplet or the last line, the author is encouraged to mention their own name. I'm not sure why, but it's just like something that you do. It's just one of the rules of a Ghazal poem. So for mine, I'll read y'all my last couplet. I am 3 years old, mesmerized by majestic light. I extend my tiny hands to touch. Dad calls to me from the other side of the yard. Mika girl, don't stare directly at the sun. So my name, like I mentioned before, is Michaela, but in Spanish it's Micaela, and that's really what it was intended to be. And Mika is the nickname that my parents gave me, and they called me that my whole childhood. So when I say Mika girl, that's me using my own name in the last couplet. Alright, so that's the Ghazal, basically. If you still have questions about the Ghazal or any of these forms, go ahead and leave questions in the comments, and I will answer them to clear things up. Alright, so the next form I'm going to talk about is the found poem. So the found poem is similar to the free verse in one way, which is that it has a lot of freedom. You have a lot of freedom as the author to kind of do what you want with it. There's not many structural rules, but so let me talk about what it is. So basically what you do is you pull words from text that has already been written, whether it's a book, song, lyrics, an email. It can be a poem that's already been written, and you just pull out words that stick out to you, words that are meaningful to you, words that you think you can piece together into your own poem, and then you piece them together. So an exercise that I'm gonna give y'all, a quick exercise, when writing or starting your found poem, is to either, like, let's say a book. Let's say you're getting the words from a book. You will read the book and make a list of 50 to 75 words that stick out to you for whatever reason. Words that you like how they sound, words that you like how they look, words that mean something to you, words that create an image in your mind. Those words, any 50 to 75 words, make a list. And yes, you will probably need that many because you have to create your own lines with those words. So yeah, that is my exercise for that. If you guys want to try it, go ahead. But you're basically going to have to do that anyways in order to write one. So it starts with a list of words. So for my found poem, I'm going to read you guys a little bit of my found poem. My found poem is called Humble Beast. I don't know if y'all listen to G Herbo. He's a rapper from Chicago, from the east side of Chicago. And he calls himself Humble Beast. That's where I got the title from. And he raps a lot about like struggle, pain, violence, poverty, and also like success because he made it. So he talks about his struggle in his music. And I've always been a really big fan of G Herbo ever since like Pistol P Project, Phaseland, all that, like all his very first stuff. And I didn't grow up in Chicago, but I have a lot of family that grew up on the west side of Chicago, and they had to deal with similar things. So I kind of connect to it in that way. And also, I'm just a really, really big fan of G Herbo. Like, I love G Herbo. But, his music. But, yeah, so I'm going to read you guys the first stanza of my found poem called Humble Beast. And, yeah. Babies, bodies, pipes, paper, problems. Bloodbath, dangerous, starving, changed him. Motivation led to greatness, congratulations. Struggle, lost streets, shootouts, bullets speak, humble beast. Okay, so that is the first stanza of my found poem. So let me see if you can see this a little bit. So if you can see, I just wrote like a word separated with a comma. That's how I separated the words. Most of it is like that. I didn't really create full phrases because I feel like if I were to do that, I would be tempted to just write down like it's already written in rhymes. Like it's already a song, which can be a challenge when it comes to found poems because whether it's like I said, a book, a poem, a song, whatever, it's already a completed product. So when you write your own poems, you piece together the words the way you like them, the way they sound to you. You piece them together in phrases, right? Essentially, you're doing the same thing, but it's harder because these words have already been put together with other words. And your job is to tear those words apart, separate them, and then put them together in different ways that, work for you. So that can be a challenge, but, I thought it was really fun to do it. And the way I wrote mine, you don't have to do it like this. I'm just telling you how I wrote mine. I separated it into 3 stanzas, and then the last line of each stanza is humble beast, and the line above that rhymes with humble beast. So it goes shootouts, bullets speak, humble beast, from the east, humble beast, and need to eat, humble beast. So that's how I did mine. That's the found poems for you. Hopefully you understand the found poem. Like I said, any questions, leave it in the comments. Okay, the next poem I'm going to be talking about is Abecedarian. I'm pretty sure that I'm saying this wrong, y'all. Like, I really don't know how to say it. But I just call it the alphabetical poem because that's really what it is. So that's how I remember it. I'll like spell it out in the description so that you can look it up if you really want to know like how you say it. I'm not 100% sure though. Okay, so the Abecedarian poem, there's 2 different ways, or I don't know, there might be more, but I know of 2 different ways to go about writing it. So the way I wrote mine is so the first letter of the first word of each line, it's basically the letters of the alphabet. So it goes down A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So let me show y'all what I mean. So this is just like a couple lines of mine. An illusion, behind closed eyes, calling to her from far away, dancing in her dark dreams, elevated fantasy. So I'm going to read you guys the first word of each line. So, and, behind, calling, dancing, elevated fantasy. So you have A, B, C, D, E, F. So that's how you do it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Not that hard. It can be a challenge to find the X, Y, Z words because they are, it's not hard to find words that begin with X, Y, and Z, but it's hard to find words that start with X, Y, and Z that go with the theme or the message of your poem. So that's one way to write it. Another way to write it is, I don't have an example to show you guys of this one because I've never written it this way. But basically, instead of having a line for each letter, you have a word for each letter. So notice how in the first line I have an illusion right here, an illusion. It would be an, and then the next word would start with a B. And then the word after that would start with a C, and then a D, and then an E. So instead of having A through Z as separate lines, it would just be separate words. So it would be shorter. It would be a shorter poem. But yeah, so that is the Abecedarian poem. Not sure how to say it still, but yeah. alphabetical form. Alright, the last form that I will be talking about is the hardest one in my eyes because it has the most rules. This one was a real challenge for me to write. Like, I kid y'all not, it took me weeks to write this form. So, it's a sonnet. I'm sure it's I feel like a lot of people have probably heard of it. I'm talking specifically about a Shakespearean sonnet. There are different kinds of sonnets within like that separate subgenre. Like I know there's an Italian sonnet. I'm not sure what else, but I'm talking about Shakespearean sonnets. So, for the sonnet, it's 14 lines and it has a rhyme scheme of like every other word rhymes. So let me explain this to you a little bit better. So it's 4 lines separated by space, 4 lines, and then 2 lines. So the first 4 lines, the last word of the first line and the last word of the third line rhyme. The last word of the second line and the last word of the fourth line rhyme. Alright? So, and it's 2 different words, like 2 different rhymes. So I'm gonna give y'all an example. I don't have mine with me, but I'm trying to remember. I think I used kisses, first line, wishes, third line. And I can't remember the 2, so I'm gonna just make something up. Them, second line, stem, fourth line. So you see what I did there? Every other. And then, so that's the first 4 lines. A space, you move down to the second 4 lines. With the second 4 lines, you choose 2 new words to rhyme. So it can't be the same as the first 4 lines. So you use 2 new words to rhyme, and you do the same thing. Every other. And then there's space, and then there's the last 2 lines, the last couplet. Both of the words rhyme. So the last 2 lines rhyme. So, yeah, I wish I could give y'all an example of that one, but I really don't have it with me. So hopefully you understand that part of it. Now there's another part of it which is a little bit more confusing, and I barely even know how to do it, to be honest, but it's called iambic pentameter. So what it is, it's a focus on stressed and unstressed syllables, and it's 5. So I don't know if this, so I was walking down the street. That's not like a good example because it's not even 5. But the point is, it's a da-dum, 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 da-dum. That's how it is. Yeah, so if I would like probably just research a little bit more about the sonnet. I can't go that much in depth because clearly I don't know everything about the sonnet. But a few of just the basic rules: 14 lines, every other. The last 2 lines rhyme, and you use iambic pentameter. So, hopefully you guys know a little bit more about some of the forms by watching this video. If you have questions, leave them down below. I will answer them, like I said. Yeah, hopefully this helped you out a little bit and you'll try some different forms. Alright, thanks for watching.